Hi all, I hope you are all doing well and welcome to the CineCircle webinar where we will be discussing online film distribution. Now, first thing is first, it would be fantastic if you guys could give me a thumbs up in the comments if you can hear me okay, and just to make sure that everything is working. As I mentioned in the chat, you would just need to create a very quick account, and quite literally the only thing that is required is a username. So you don't need any login details or anything like that. You just need to come up with your own username and you'll be able to access the chat. I see that some of you are mentioning that everything is okay, which is fantastic. So we are going to get started on this webinar. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to pop them in the chat. Okay, so let's start off with a brief introduction to this webinar. Over the last few years at CineCircle, we interviewed producers, distributors, aggregators, PR consultants, as well as marketing experts. And the entire point of that was to come up with what is the best strategy to distribute your film online profitably. And in this webinar, I will walk you through the main strategies from releasing that indie film online profitably. And we are going to go through how to create marketable films. We're going to talk a little bit about audience research, pre-existing communities, online accounts and pages, aggregators and distributors, the general distribution strategy, as well as the conclusion. And essentially, we are trying to bring sort of as many ideas and as many concepts here as we can within the next 30 minutes or so. So we are going to be going quite fast and trying to cram in as much information as we can to give you guys as much value as possible. Okay, so let's start off with the first part, which is going to be how do you pick the right project? Now, some of you might already have a film, some of you not. And if you don't have that film that you're looking to distribute yet, but you're looking to create one, you really need to pay attention on how to create a marketable film. And when releasing a film online, it really does help massively to pick a type of film with a strong pre-existing audience. It's really, really key. So for example, if you're creating a horror film, this really kind of genre film, it might have a very big pre-existing audience. There are a lot of horror film fans, and specifically, there are a lot of horror film fans that like to watch low-budget horror indie films. And therefore, you already have an audience for your film, whereas there isn't that much of an audience for example, indie drama films or indie comedies. When people want to watch those kinds of films, they're looking for big productions with well-known actors. So you've got a niche with an audience if you go down the indie horror film route. Or for example, if you're making a documentary about Bigfoot, for example, that is one of those documentaries where there's people who are really, really passionate about this topic. They're really passionate about Bigfoot, and because of that, you will have this pre-existing audience. And there are a lot of documentary films that might have that kind of pre-existing audience. The other way that you can create a marketable film is to have a subject that will spark a debate. So, for example, a documentary film about a conspiracy theory. For example, a 9/11 conspiracy theory documentary. There are a lot of people where if they watch that kind of film, it will spark a debate. And then you will get some natural marketing from that, or organic marketing from that, where you will not have to do anything yourself, but people after watching the film will simply talk about it. And this kind of word of mouth marketing is extremely helpful because it's free. Or for example, if you're creating, I don't know, a drama film about assisted suicide, a super controversial topic, again, that will create this, really this kind of subject that people will want to discuss with their family members, with their friends, with their colleagues. And that way you will get this free word of mouth marketing going after every single person who watches your film. So The next thing that I want to talk about is picking a project with a subject you're genuinely extremely interested in and a genre you absolutely love. So if you're shooting a horror film, ask yourself, would I go to a horror film festival? Am I part of any horror online or offline communities? Do I even speak to people about horror films? Do I enjoy watching them? Do I know a lot of recent or older horror films? Am I genuinely interested in this genre or in this topic of a film? Because in order to create a film that to create a good film, first of all, you're going to really need to love it because you're going to be married to that film like a baby for, a very long time. And second of all, to be able to market a film, you have to understand the audience. And the best way to understand the audience is to sort of be part of the audience. So the final thing before we get into the bulk of the webinar, I want to mention is that from every single producer and distributor and everything, everyone that we interviewed to create the content of this, everyone mentioned one thing, which is keep making movies, because it's extremely unlikely that one project will make you a lot of money. So don't spend 5 years working on only one feature film. Make many films. One of the people we interviewed for this course was Jason Horton. If you Google him or if you YouTube him, you will find that nearly every single indie film distribution video on YouTube is created by him. And he creates a feature film every single month. And that's how he makes his money, because he's able to create so many very low budget feature films that's the way that he makes money. So don't put all of your eggs into one basket. Keep making films. Now let's start off with audience research. The first step of your distribution plan is to figure out who is your audience. Now, most likely your film is going to have multiple types of viewers who would be interested in the film. And again, it's sort of for different reasons. So at first, you don't want to be too specific. The first thing that you want to do with audience research is simply put together a list of types of people and why they would be interested in your film. And through doing this, you're going to start creating your audience persona, your ideal audience persona. So for example, if you're making an indie drama film about mental health, you want to, you've got your 3 main categories, which are, drama film lovers, indie film fans, and mental health sort of supporters and evangelists. And your ideal audience is right there in the middle that overlaps, and that includes all 3 of these. But outside of that, you've got so much more. So what are the topics and the themes? So for example, parenthood, domestic abuse, drug abuse, social political topics, all of these different themes that might be that, specific people might be interested in. Is there a very specific location that people might even be interested in? Are there any strong female characters? Do you have a really diverse cast? Do you have any notable actors? Try to, put together as many reasons why someone could be interested in your film as possible. And you will begin creating this audience persona, which is going to be extremely useful when you start doing your marketing. Now, where can you find your audience? No matter how niche or broad your topic, you will find thousands of Facebook groups where your audience consumes content, right? So that is usually the very first and best place to start, Facebook. Go on Facebook and just search specifically for Facebook groups and find your audience. You can also find Reddit threads, Twitter accounts, all these, different places online where your audience exists, and get on the platforms to learn more about them. What do they like about, films that are similar to yours? What do they hate? And note down key phrases and use them in your film. So, you really want to kind of get to know, this, what you're trying to know down is these key phrases that you're going to use for your promotional copy. So essentially, you're going to be finding, okay, people are constantly looking for new films. So perhaps in your promotional copy, you will want to add that the film has been released in 2022, making it, more updated. That's just one of many examples. So you want to figure out what kind of language do people use. Next, you want to become part of these online communities, and this can be extremely valuable, but only if you do it right. So start long before you release the film, because this process takes time. So what most people do is they end up spamming and self-promoting in all of these different communities, such as Facebook groups, and it simply doesn't work. What you need to do is really make people kind of, in order to get people to actually click on your film and watch it, you have to really become part of these communities. So you have to join them, you have to engage with people, you have to learn about them, and then you will get people's trust and you will get people to view your film. I also want to take a quick kind of brief outline to talk about sort of online accounts and pages. And these really divide into a couple of sections. First, you've got social media platforms, you have your website, and you have your IMDb page. Those are really the main accounts online that you need to be worried about when you're creating your film. So when it comes to social media accounts, as well as the website, every single producer and distributor that I've spoken to said the same thing. Do not create those specifically for your film. Instead, create your Facebook profile, your Instagram account, your website for your film company, for your film production company. And that way, every single time you create a new film, you will be able to build on the same Facebook page, on the same Instagram account, on the same website to drive more traffic to the website. And that way, you will be able to create sort of long-term accounts. Whereas I see a lot of filmmakers who create a new Facebook page for every single film that they make, and that way every single time they make a new film, they're starting from scratch rather than starting from their pre-existing fan base. So create just one website for your production company, and for one Facebook page, one Instagram account, one Twitter account for your production company, and use that to promote every single film that you make. And once again, continue to make films and do not focus on just one. Now, the next is to create an IMDb page, which is extremely important. And I go into a lot of depth about this in my courses, but here, just the main thing and the main tip that I can give you in this quick webinar is to make sure that you fill in all the details that you can. So literally, everything about the crew, images, even the sort of goof section, and absolutely everything. Make sure to fill that in, because it will help your visibility. Now let's talk a little bit about aggregators and distributors. So working with distributors. First of all, what are traditional distributors? These are essentially companies that will help release the film online, on DVD, perhaps in cinemas, and quite literally everywhere. So these traditional distributors, they tend to take a cut of all the sales of the films, whatever that deal might be. It might be 20% or so that they will take of all the sales of the film. And with these, you want to be very, very careful what deals you accept, because you will hear absolute horror stories about distributors. It tends to be that distributors, if you get the right one, they will be the one sort of company that will be the best to make your film successful. It's usually the best choice, but you can also get some very, very bad deals where distributors lock you in for a period of 5 years where you cannot show the film to anyone else and you cannot distribute it yourself. And they have absolutely no need to distribute the film themselves, because that's not within the contract. So you can get locked into this sneaky kind of contract where you're locked in and cannot do anything with your film. So basically, make sure that you read very carefully any agreement and any deal that you accept. Next are digital distributors. And these are essentially the distributors that will help distribute your film, but only on online platforms. So indie film rights, for example, is one of them. There are plenty of other kind of online film distributors. These tend to sort of they tend to work a little bit like aggregators. They help put your film on a lot of platforms. They're usually worse at actually helping promote and market the film. They're usually there to put them on platforms and sort of hope for the best. So you will still have to do a lot of your own marketing. And then you have aggregators. Aggregators, you usually pay them a one-off fee to put your film on certain platforms such as Tubi, such as Google Play, such as iTunes, because there are actually a lot of platforms online where the platforms do not deal with individual filmmakers. They will only deal with aggregators and distributors because they will be buying films in bulk and they will not be dealing with these individual filmmakers such as yourself. So there are certain platforms where you can absolutely put, the film on the platform yourself. An example is YouTube, for example. But you cannot put a film on iTunes by yourself. You have to go through either an aggregator or a distributor. And again, they usually charge a one-off fee and they just put your film on that platform, and but you still have to do all of your own marketing. And then if you can't get a distributor, usually, again, every single producer that I've spoken to has recommended FilmHub as the next best option. And the way that FilmHub works is it's a little bit of a combination of an aggregator and an online distributor. But essentially, you will put your film on FilmHub, and FilmHub will pitch that film to a ton of different platforms. And that way you can get on a lot of platforms such as Tubi, which you would not be able to put the film on yourself. And again, they will take 20% of the sales of the film. Now, every single film is accepted onto FilmHub and it's very easy to use, but you might get your film onto FilmHub and not go onto any of the platforms because the platforms don't accept you. And again, there are a lot of courses and videos online that you can see, a lot more detail about FilmHub, how it works, and in general, sort of what the process is like and what are the best practices for uploading a film on FilmHub. And then I also want to give you guys a little neat trick for finding new platforms that you've never heard of. Everyone's heard of Amazon or Tubi or iTunes or Google Play, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, of platforms where you can stream films online. And there are a lot of them that are very unknown. Like, who's heard of Film Ahoy, for example? It's a very indie platform for streaming films based in the UK. If you get onto as many of those platforms as possible, that will help reach as many people as possible. And to do that, you can use a free plugin called Similar Sites. Essentially, you can go to the list of platforms that FilmHub uses, which you can just find on the FilmHub website. And then you can click on some of them, such as, for example, will take you to Amazon Prime or Tubi. And then you can use this plugin called Similar Sites, and it will come up with 10, 20, 30 sites that are similar to the one that you're on. And that way you will find sites that are similar to, say, Tubi. And through that plugin, you can find hundreds of platforms that you would have never known about. And these will really help get as many people to view your film as possible. Next, I want to talk a little bit about AVOD, SVOD, and TVOD, or AVOD, SVOD, TVOD, depending on how you prefer to pronounce it. And these are the different kind of models for making money from films online. AVOD is currently probably the most popular one right now, which is advertising-based video on demand, which essentially is, most of YouTube is like this. All the free platforms where you do not need to pay any subscription, you don't pay for a film, you watch a film and in the middle you have ads, that's AVOD. SVOD is subscription-based video on demand. And this is the your Netflix, your Amazon Prime. You pay a monthly subscription and you can view as many films as you want on that platform that are included in that subscription. And then finally, you have transactional video on demand, which is, you actually pay for a film. So you go on Amazon, you pay $9.99 and you watch a blockbuster film, for example. That is transactional video on demand. So which one should you use is the question. And to be perfectly honest, AVOD and SVOD are not non-exclusive, meaning you can use both of them because people don't mind that they can watch something, for free with ads, or they paid for a subscription on Amazon Prime and they find it there. and they watch it without ads. So most of the time people use AVOD and SVOD together, and they just get on as many of those platforms as they can. Now, transactional video on demand, you really don't want to do along with AVOD or SVOD, because people can get pretty upset if they find out that they paid to watch a film specifically and then found out that they could have actually watched it for free. And to be perfectly honest, in today's world where even massive blockbuster films, you can't get people to pay to watch them, we live in an era where people expect films to be free, especially indie films. So unless you have notable cast, a really topical subject, a big marketing budget, or even a sort of pre-existing audience that would really want to watch that film, I would recommend not going for TVOD. If you have any of those, you can start off with transactional video on demand. For example, on Amazon, put your film up for, say, $4.99. For the first few months, you will get those people who are really keen to watch it, and then you can switch to AVOD and SVOD later. But otherwise, I would recommend just getting as many people to view it as possible with AVOD and SVOD, where you will get paid for every hour that your film is streamed. And then I want to talk a little bit to you guys about this overall distribution strategy. Now, the issue with distribution today is that, for example, Amazon will pay 1 cent, if that, for every 1 hour of your film that's streamed. That essentially means that you're going to get paid about 1 cent for every time someone watches your entire film. Other platforms pay very similar amounts. And, through Facebook ads or through traditional paid pay-per-click advertising, if you get a click for 1 cent or half a cent, that would be an extremely good result. If you're running Facebook ads and people are clicking on your link and that costs you 1 cent, that is an insanely good result. Now, of course, someone clicks on your ad, they go to watch the film. Not everyone who clicks on the link will watch at least an hour of the film. They'll probably watch, some of them won't watch any of it, some of them will watch a minute, and maybe 1 in 100 or 1,000 will watch the entire film. And this poses an issue. The issue is that you will never, ever be able to run directly profitable ads for your film, unless you understand the platform's algorithm and unless you understand the wider distribution strategy. So, for example, when you are on your Facebook groups, let's use a free example. When you're on your Facebook groups and you are, posting the link to your film and you are spreading the message and you are, engaging with people on Twitter and, showing your link and getting people to, to watch your film, and you might think to yourself, wow, I got 15 people to click on my link today. This is pathetic. I just made the maximum I could have made from that is 15 cents. Was it really worth it? And the thing is, you are not trying to get that direct return on your investment here. You are trying to trick the algorithms into promoting the film for you. And that is a big distribution strategy that many do not understand. So let's talk a little bit about algorithms. Amazon and other platforms work very similar to Facebook and to Google. Their algorithms decide which films they will promote to visitors and which they won't show. So, for example, if you go on Amazon Prime and a big blockbuster appears right at the front, that will get an enormous amount of views. Why? Because they appear at the top of everyone's page and everyone finds out that the new film with, Russell Crowe or Brad Pitt is out on Amazon. That's what you want to try and accomplish. You will probably not accomplish it with an indie film on that scale, but so many people will watch that film without any marketing because it's at the top of those pages. And that's what you want to do. You want to try and get Amazon, and everyone to promote the film for you, So the main strategy is not how you can best promote your film, but how to get platforms to promote the film for you. And this means that you, for example, with any paid advertising, you are not looking for a direct return on investment. It means that that effort that I was talking about on social media promotion to get one person to watch your film will not equal 1 cent. Instead, everything we're doing is to help put your title in the best position on all of those platforms so that the platforms promote the film to thousands and tens of thousands of people for you. And what affects the algorithms? So again, this is something that you can find a lot of videos about it, and a lot of my courses go quite in depth into these algorithms because they're quite tricky and sort of complex algorithms. But there are a couple of main things. The first one, engagement with your title. This means that how many people view your film, and by view I mean what is the view rate, how much of your film do they watch on average. Do people watch 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes of your film? Because the more that from people who watch your film, if everyone finishes the film and watches the entire film, Amazon and Tubi and all these platforms will go, wow, this film must be incredible, that it hooked everyone in so much that they finish the film, and they will start promoting it to more people. The same way, if someone likes, clicks, purchases, the amount of watch time, total watch time that it has, all of these kinds of engagements with your title help put your title at the top of the page. The second is traffic. Whether it's organic and paid, you need to get as much traffic onto that page as possible. The more people are viewing the film, the more traffic you get, the more views you will get, and based on that, the more you will get people to the more people organically will start seeing the film. And I've spoken to a producer who did an experiment where he was spending just £10 a day on Facebook ads to his film that was currently on Amazon Prime, and he saw that whether he was doing that or he wasn't doing that, he was seeing massive spikes in way more people were viewing the film than from his Facebook ads when he was running them. And the moment he stopped running the Facebook ads, all of those organic, natural people who were just randomly finding his film on Amazon suddenly stopped. So you want to drive as much traffic as possible, and that will get you even more traffic through Amazon or through Tubi or through all those platforms. And finally, you have reviews, both internal and external reviews. So these are your bloggers, your journalists, your film reviewers. You want to get reviews both on the platforms, such as, again, on Amazon, on Tubi, on YouTube, through comments and so on. And you also want to get as many external reviews. And those you can usually get, again, through IMDb. You can get people who will blog about your film and review it on their websites, and they'll usually link that to your actual film. And I think it's safe to say that there is very little chance of getting a really bad review that will really hurt your project. Even if you have a film that has a terrible review, some people will honestly watch it because they want to just see, oh, is it really that bad? And on sort of an indie film scale, not that many people will read the blogs unless you've got the Guardian writing about your film. Again, it's very hard to actually get a review that will be really, really negative for your film. So do your own research, except for that, on what each one of the platform's algorithms is, how it works, and how you can work with it. And then finally, I want to talk to you guys about sort of the conclusion. So the conclusion, again, I appreciate that this was a very short 30-minute webinar where I was trying to jam a lot of information in. But essentially, the conclusion here is make marketable films with topics that you're truly interested in. And if you want to make a profitable film from indie self-distribution, make the film on a really low budget. A lot of people try to add a lot of budget. The difference between making a 100K film and a 10K film and a 5K film is that if you make a film for 5K and it's a really low budget documentary, you're quite likely to make your money back. If you're making a 100K feature film, it's going to be very difficult unless you put a lot of that money into marketing or unless you have a very kind of notable actor. And second of all, work smart, not hard. Don't just promote your film. Get the algorithms to keep making to promote it for you. And then the final biggest thing that I can tell you guys is keep making movies. Don't just stick to one film. Make sure that you keep making more and more films. Build up that portfolio so that each one of the film will continue giving you revenue over the next 10, 20, 30 years. Okay, so if there are any questions, please pop them in the chat and I'm going to go through them in just a moment. But in the meantime, if you guys are interested in more information about this and more kind of an in-depth course, feel free to check out the link right below this video where you can claim a really discounted course, which has 4 hours of video tutorials. Or if you are based in London, there is another event, a film networking event, as well as a film distribution webinar, which is going to be an 1.5 hour long webinar that's going to go more in depth into all of this next week on Wednesday. You can also scroll down on this page and take a look at all of our future events. And these include, film crowdfunding masterclasses, a film distribution summit, a film and TV job fair, and so on. But anyways, let me quickly get to your questions to see if there was anything else that I missed over here. So Melanie, to answer your question, this content is not the same as next week's event. So next week's event will be a lot more in depth. It's going to be in person, and yeah, it will be like 3 times as long. So there will be more detailed information there. A distribution company for indie documentaries. Off the top of my head, I don't know one, but with your friend Google, I'm sure you can find it quite easily. It also depends on where you're based, and again, whether you're looking for a online distributor or just an offline distributor. But your best bet is to Google it to find quite a lot of different options. And also with distributors, a great thing to do is to attend events. So attend, film festivals, film markets, and that's the best way to find distribution companies and find distributors, talk to them face to face. They get spammed with emails every single day. So if you're just going to email them, you're unlikely to get a response. So try and meet them face to face, give them a phone call. That's the best way to get in touch with them. Any other genres except for horror? So horror is a film genre that is usually kind of synonymous with, the easiest marketable genre. But you can also have, for example, science fiction films, fantasy films, those kinds of films, or again, very kind of topical documentaries. These are all films that tend to be much easier to market than, for example, a traditional drama film. And final question, why such sensational subjects? So the sensational subjects, they help spark that conversation, as I mentioned. So, they are people who are, if you have these subjects that spark a conversation, such as, about assisted suicide, everyone who watches the film will then discuss it the next day with their colleagues. They'll, say, what do you think about this topic, while promoting the film for you for free. Does any of this apply to movie theater distribution? So it does and it doesn't, in a sense. In a way, you're trying to market it in the same way, but at the same time, movie theater distribution. The one biggest tip that I can give you is you have to have a distributor who will help guide you through it, because there are very few people who can actually distribute a film in a theater themselves. So definitely find a distributor if you are going to do a cinema release. Social media accounts we can follow. We do. So if you search for CineCircle, either on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you'll be able to find us on there. Lena, based in the US, just wondering if you had any other tips for nonfiction. So again, nonfiction, my biggest tip for you guys is to, have a topic, again, that you're super passionate about. find that pre-existing audience and based on that create a fan base around the documentary film. There was a interview that I did with a film producer who created a sort of crowdfunding campaign where he crowdfunded $250,000 for a documentary film, which was about this sort of old video game. And in that, and because he went to sort of a ton of different exhibitions and events where, you know, that company that created that video game was there, he talked to hundreds and hundreds of people over literally a couple of years who were such huge fans of that video game that when he was creating the documentary, he got a huge amount of backers through a crowdfunding campaign because he knew so many people personally. So with documentaries, they can be, you know, very, very personal, and especially with the topic. And I think you should, you know, sort of market it in a very personal way as well, and actually have a lot of people have these project ambassadors who know you, know the project, and who also want to spread the message. Is this the same for short films? So to be perfectly honest, short films are extremely, extremely difficult to make any money out of. You can, for example, look at companies such as Indie Shorts Film TV, I believe it's called, Indie Shorts TV. So you can look at these kinds of places where they might buy a short film from you, but to get people to pay for a short film is extremely, extremely difficult. Or if you go down the, and a lot of platforms don't accept short films, but if you are going to go down this route, you're going to have way fewer or way more limited number of platforms that you can promote the film on. But the general strategy would be exactly the same for a short film as a feature film in terms of what I spoke about today. Okay. No platform for a cinema release then. Yeah, so there isn't necessarily a platform where you can really easily get a film released through a cinema. And even if there was, I really wouldn't recommend it. I would 100% go down, if you are trying to do a cinema release, go down the route of either finding a distributor and doing a proper big cinema release, or simply hiring out a theater room. And there are certain platforms, I forgot what they're called, especially in the UK, where you can actually sell your tickets for, you know, for say for a cinema release. And if you don't sell enough tickets, then the screening automatically gets canceled and everyone gets refunded. So that way you can use these kinds of platforms to set up a cinema release where that is risk-free. So you don't have to pay up front for a cinema or for a room. You will simply get a percentage of the ticket sales. And if you don't get enough ticket sales, the film simply won't go forward and won't be released. I forgot exactly what it was called, but take a look at this kind of platforms because they do exist. Okay, great, guys. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. I hope that it was useful. And once again, if you would like to, you know, attend any of the other events, or if you are interested in a more in-depth film distribution course, simply scroll down and you can find all the links at the bottom of the page. But for now, thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it useful. And I wish you guys all the best in distributing your films.